Now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, thank you all for joining us today. We'll be starting at the top of the hour. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Tax 1099 for Accountants, our training seminar. This is actually the first in our series that we are presenting for the 2017 filing season. This session will be recorded, so you'll be able to access it later on that training page. We'll have a URL at the end of this presentation. We've got lots to cover today, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with the introductions. In 1 second. We've got Marcus Parsons with us today. He'll be presenting. He is a CPA formerly with PwC. He joined our team this year, and his focus is on accounting and bookkeeping professionals. So he builds those relationships, and he'll be excited to speak with you today. We've also got Ed Pratt, our Chief Operating Officer of Zenwork Incorporated. He has 19 years of experience in compliance outsourcing, including human resources, payroll, and tax. He's been assisting our Tax 1099 clients for the past 4 years, and he has a lot of knowledge he'd like to share with you today. A couple housekeeping items. If you have any questions for us today, go ahead and ask those in the chat box on the right side of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end of our session. If you have any trouble with your audio, there's the phone number right there on your screen. You can call to contact the GoToWebinar support, or you can use that URL. Some of the things we're going to be talking about today, we'll go over this season's Tax 1099 updates, several new interesting navigation items, some new forms that we'll like to tell you about. We'll go through importing data and how to create forms, how to schedule and edit forms, and how you can correct forms. I'm going to turn it over to Ed now. He's going to talk to you about our season updates.
All right, thanks, Geneva. Thanks everybody for joining us. My name is Ed Pratt, and as Geneva said, I'm the COO. So we've got a lot of things that we're excited about for this year. I'm just going to list a couple of them on here. One that Geneva has on the slide here is the W-2 import from QuickBooks Desktop. That's something that our accountant clients have been asking for the last couple of years, and we've built a method to enable you as an accountant or even as a client, if your client wanted to do this as well, to be able to take the W-2s out of QuickBooks Desktop, bring them into Tax1099 via the PDF file that is produced at the end of the creation process when you're going through QuickBooks Desktop payroll. So that's something that we're pretty excited about, happy to have been able to release. And we're looking forward to getting some feedback from you guys on how that worked for you and your clients. And one of the reasons that that's been a fairly big deal is that we've had questions about that for our clients who want to keep everything in one place and be able to just go in and use Tax 1099 for all of their documentation purposes. So that's a nice thing. We rolled out the 940 series of forms a couple of years ago. Some of our accountants and bookkeepers take advantage of that, particularly for their clients who have maybe outside payroll, or they're not even using a true payroll service. They're just doing some spreadsheets, some time clock, and kind of managing it themselves. Those 940s, 941s, 944, 945 have all been available for the last couple of years. So this year we've introduced a 943 for clients with agricultural needs. They can do the 943 filing, and then the 941X is a little bit different. It is a corrected 941 filing. However, the IRS doesn't let anyone e-file the 941X, so it produces a printable copy that you can send out to the IRS to do any corrections that you might have on the 941 filing. And we do go backwards with those, just like we do with our other forms. So you can go back a couple years if you had some corrected need for a client who had a specific filing need. And then dashboard enhancements. We're going to spend a few minutes on the dashboard enhancements, and I've got a couple of slides about those dashboard enhancements that we'll take a look at here. There we go. So the dashboard enhancements, we got some feedback from our accountant and bookkeeping clients, as well as small and medium business users who were interested in seeing a bit of a different way to track their forms and their payers, and letting them know what had been filed, what had not been filed. So with the new dashboard, which I'll be showing you here in just a minute, you'll be able to go in and you'll be able to kind of see the status of your forms based on your payers, based on tax years, based on the type of status. You can see the date that something last occurred with those forms. The payer's taxpayer identification number is there, as well as their name, but it's truncated. The total amount, so if you are processing forms, if you've used Tax1099 in the past, you've maybe done an import or just created several forms, you know that we provide you with the total amounts that you can compare back to a report from QuickBooks or Xero or wherever you might be bringing that data in. And we have that listed on this dashboard as well, along with the form type count and the scheduled date of the filing. And then the filtering and searching capabilities, you can go by TIN, you can go by name, by the form status, or by the year. So lots of different ways that you can kind of take a look at those different forms in the new dashboard. So I'm going to switch over and show you what that's going to look like here in Tax 1099. So I'm bringing up my dashboard. We rolled this out actually a couple of weeks ago, and everyone who's a registered user got an email explaining what the changes were going to be and what they were going to look like. So you may already be familiar with this. If you've logged in the last week or so, then you would have seen these changes in place as well. But if you remember last year, our dashboard looked significantly different than this. I'm going to click this little plus button up here. All of these links were kind of center focus on the dashboard, and then we had some smaller areas toward the bottom that gave you status of the last 3 filings that you'd done, maybe the last 3 10 matches, the last 3 emails. Those types of things were available there. So we still have the quick links. We've just moved them up here into this site actions section up here. And on the dashboard, you can quickly see what you're looking at as far as your different filings. So I can tell here I've got several green filings. We've got a key here. Those are approved. I've got some that are blocked. I can go through and I can look at my prior year filings. If I want to just limit it down to my 2015 filings, if I want to look at just what I'm doing for 2017, I can do that as well. And you'll notice the difference in the key now. I've got just submitted versus some that are not submitted. So I have things that have been submitted that they've not been accepted yet because the IRS isn't actually doing anything with 2017 filings. But I've got some that are waiting for me to go out here and do the final process with, to go through and make those final submissions. So if I need to do any editing or anything like that, then I'm able to do that. I can also create a new filing from this point. I can do all of the other navigation. That hasn't changed. These are still the places that you'd go to view, edit, or submit any of these forms that are sitting here currently in a not submitted status. I can go right in there and do that submission pretty quickly. I can choose to have Tax1099 mail those out for me. I can have them emailed. I can do all my TIN matching. All that is still the same, and that goes for all of our other menu options over here on the side as well. So all of that capability is still built in. I can further limit this down just to see what I've not submitted. So that gives me a really good visibility into going in and making sure that I can make sure that I have all of my forms submitted in a timely fashion before I get to the end of January. Other buttons that are up here, we've got a logout button. So if you just hover over these buttons when you're logged in, it'll tell you what those represent. There's a logout button. There's a settings button. So if you are an enterprise user, you can go in here. That's where you can add your member users. That's where you can work with your capabilities for those member users, giving them specific rights in the system. If you want to contact our support, that is there. While I'm talking about support, I'll also point out down here at the bottom right corner, that's the same chat tool that we've had last year. So that is there available as well. So make sure that you're taking advantage of that. And then again, the blue circle up here with the what would you like to do, you can go in and you can quickly go in and do any of these options. One of the ones that I'll point out here, because we get this question every year, is do I get a 1096? The true answer is no, you don't get a 1096 because it's not necessary when you e-file, but we do have a summary PDF available that you can use as a printable copy. You can provide that to a client who might need to see that summary, or might want to see that summary that's there. And then there's just a variety of other options that are available here. So that's pretty much it for the changes in the dashboard. I know we may get some questions on that. Geneva talked about sharing those questions with us and making sure that we can answer those questions for you. So if you do have those questions, please put them into the chat framework, and we'll be able to get those questions answered for you. And with that, I am going to turn back over to Marcus. Before I send it over to Marcus, I just want to do a quick poll, though. I want to make sure that we've got the understanding of what you guys are using as far as your software. The software that you might be using to do your form. So I'm going to launch out this poll real quickly. And if everybody will take a shot here, I've got QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, Xero, Bill.com, and then other down there. We integrate or interact with a lot of different softwares. Unfortunately, GoToWebinar only let me put 5 in here, so I had to kind of create a catch-all down there. You can indicate more than one of your categories here. So if you use both QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online and Xero and Bill.com, you can check all those boxes there. I've got about 80% of people have voted at this point, and please continue to vote. I'm going to give you another 5 seconds or so that we can do that, and then I'll show you what the poll results are here for this particular poll that we're doing. We got 88%. If I can get the 90%, that would be great. Almost there. One more person votes, I'll be there. Oh, okay. We've been going for a minute. Oh, 91%. Excellent. So thank you for participating. Thanks for humoring me and getting that out there. All right. So I am going to close the poll now. Last second if you want to do a vote, but I'm going to close the poll, show you what the results of that are. take a look at that. So a lot of people who are here are using QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online. So you can see the breakdown of those differences, the 0, the Bill.com, and then 20% using other. So there are a significant number of other softwares that are out there that you're able to see. So thanks for participating in that poll for me and doing that process. That helps us understand for Marcus's next section where maybe to focus some more of his time. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marcus, and then I'll be back here in a few minutes to talk about some of the managed form options that you have available as well.
Hello, everyone. This is Marcus. Glad you joined us today. I'm excited to tell you about some of the capabilities we have on our platform. So I'll just be going through, as the poll said, I'll start with QuickBooks Desktop and show how our program integrates with desktop and then online, and then hand it back over to Ed to show you some more capabilities of just using the application. So if you would sign in, you'll be greeted with the dashboard that Ed has explained to you of the updates. You'll go over here to import. If this is your first time using the application, you'll click on QuickBooks Desktop. And then you'll have two options to do the web connector or the plugin. You can choose either one of them. I'll show you the plugin option, and it's going to ask me. I'll just start a new import here. It's just making sure that if I've done this before, because it has recognized that I have. So I will get the file that I'll need to download. I'll click Download QB Service and Instructions. That will be an executable file that you will be able to execute on your workstation or inside a server if it is hosted on a local server there in your office, or if you have a hosted environment such as Cloud9, Right Networks, or one of the other providers. They will need to install this on that hosted environment for you. And then, if you have access, you can do it yourself. And then you can follow the steps. You can go through this. It's literally a click, plug and play there. So follow the instructions on the screen. It's exactly as it's documented here. You'll want to make sure that you check these two buttons whenever QuickBooks Company is open, and then allow this application to access personal data, because we are going to be able to pull, we need to be able to pull the social security number. So it's just verifying that you want Tax1099 to do that for you, and you'll say continue, and then you're ready to go. So if I bring my desktop instance over here, once you're done and completed, you'll be greeted the first time you open a client file asking you for permission, and then you will give the client file permission, or give Tax1099 permission to operate within that client file. And then what happens is you get a plugin. With the plugin, you'll get an additional menu item here that will allow you to upload information to Tax1099. So what this is going to do is it's going to pull in all the mapping, all of the information, any vendors that you have selected for 1099s. It will automatically bring them in. They will need to enter or have greater than $600 to make the threshold for needing to receive a 1099. So you will click that. It will be greeted. You'll be greeted with this menu. This menu will ask for a username and password. This will be your Tax1099 username and password. So bear with me as I enter in my password here. And if I entered everything incorrectly, I can select the year that I want. So you can do the past 2 years or the current year. I'm going to do current year. And I'm going to log in. And once I hit log in, what it's doing is extracting all the information, looking around for possible vendors and people that qualify to receive a 1099, and I have someone here. So something to note that can throw people is it says it identified 12 vendors, but it's only uploading Dan here because he was the only one that qualified. So I have some other people in the system that are not eligible for 1099s, do not meet the threshold. So that is the reason why it only brought in Dan. This is what we call our import grid. So our import grid allows you to view the data before it's officially in the system. So this is, if you hit back here, this information would be removed from the system. It's actually, this is a pre-import screen, is an easy way to think of it. And you can do things like edit it. So if you say, whoa, I know there's a reimbursement that's a part of this, or possibly you only had a client set up for a partial year, you could add or subtract, you could change boxes. This is based on the mapping that is done in QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop, but that's easily changeable here before you even put it into the system. And then you're able to also review the information, do an address verification check here if you wanted to do that. Very easy to do. You can even look for information that needs to be updated. It will alert you with our color-coded system here. If there is an error in the recipient, you'll get a yellow dot for the company, and a red dot for the recipient. If the payer is missing some information, it will give you a red dot there indicating that some change needs to be made. That's usually an omitted piece of information, such as a state or a zip code, or possibly a name. So if you have incomplete information in your QuickBooks, it will catch that and bring it over and alert you before you can proceed. If you have a red or orange dot by a company or vendor, it will not allow you to officially import that into the system. So you'll need to get green checks all the way through, and I will select this company. I can select them here. If I had more than one vendor, it would select them by selecting this company here, and I'll hit next. And so that will officially bring that vendor and payer into the system, and it gives me an alert here that one of one records was successfully uploaded. Here is the import after the post import screen. We call this the view, edit, submit forms screen. So this gives you all the options that are available to filing 1099s on the platform. So selecting this box to the far left identifies that to be e-filed, which is the way that we file all forms here at Tax1099, so that must be selected. You have the option to mail with United States Postal Service, so that is the outsourced option that we provide, and it's just by clicking that button you can send a recipient their copy, and that goes out in a pressure-sealed envelope, and with the perforated edges. It even has tracking and delivery tracking capabilities that you can track within the application that you can see here, form delivery report. So you can do the tracking directly within the application. I do not have an email address. It is alerting me here that I do not have an email address, and if I had, I could email this recipient, and there's no additional charge for emailing. It is included with the cost of e-filing. And the next section is the TIN match. And so a TIN match is best practice if you're filing on behalf of your clients. We'll take that vendor name and tax identification number and check it against the IRS's database. And when we do that, we'll get back to you within the application and alert you that the vendor has either been accepted or rejected by the IRS in terms of the names matching the tax identification number. And if you get an accepted name and tax ID, you know that that will be accepted from the IRS. The state filing, Dan did not qualify for a state, so if he had state information, you would be able to select the state to file with the state revenue department if they were not on the combined state and federal program, or some states even are on combined state and federal if you're doing withholding, but that is that is a very rare case for 1099s. So I will show you right now, just because it makes sense, the scheduling feature that we have. Accountants really enjoy this feature. It helps them out immensely during the filing season. So right now, if I processed this vendor for this payer, that form would be submitted with the IRS on January 16, 2018, as that is the first day they're accepting forms. I can change this. And just to make a note, if you did select USPS mail, once I submit this, I will be able to, if the recipient copy will go out. So that is the eFile date, not the recipient mailing date. So the mailing goes out immediately, but you can delay the filing for the IRS. So I can change that here with this pop-up. And so if I wanted to wait till the deadline, maybe or just the day before, I'll do the 30th. If I filed an extension, it would allow me to go past the extension, the normal deadline into the extension deadline. So I'll just select the 30th. I will go OK, and it will be scheduled to go out on the 30th. If you had any issues once you filed and said, hey, I have scheduled this for submission, but it looks like I needed to update this amount, it seemed incorrect. As long as it's before that eFile submission date, there's no need to do a corrected, there's no need to do a update or anything. You'll just go into this section here, you'll click edit, and that'll allow you to edit this information right here. So if I needed to make any updates, I could, and then as long as it's before the submission schedule date, there is no need to make any changes. You would just update the recipient, send them a new copy with any changes that you have made. So I'm ready to go. I will select e-filing and US mail, and then if I hit next, it will take me to the confirmation screen where I will submit. It's alerting me about our mailing time frame, and then it will take me to the submit an e-file. I will cancel because I don't need to do that right now, but I will go and show you the import for QuickBooks Online. So if I go to QuickBooks Online, that's where I'll start. I'm currently disconnected. It will ask me for my QuickBooks Online credentials here once it's connecting to QuickBooks Online. I have already signed in, so I will select my QBOA account. So that's just my QuickBooks. I have one client here, so I will select that client to be my option. I will confirm that I want to connect, and then yes, I'm going to authorize the connection between the two applications. So that gives me a connected status. That gives me option of all of my companies. I actually have some more companies in here with another account, but it's bringing them all over so I can select which one I want. I'll select company one, and I'll select the year, which is 2017, and I'll proceed. So I am going to, I want to start a new import here. And this is the mapping feature. So if you haven't done the mapping in your QuickBooks Online account yet, you can do the mapping right here. I'm going to put everything to box 7. And yes, legal and professional fees and just professional fees will all go to box 7. And then I'll hit next. And it will show the import grid that I've seen. This is just alerting me that I can make changes and make sure that the mapping is done correctly, and that I can change boxes over en masse if I need to, that I see if, hey, I want to move everything from a box 7 to maybe a box 1. So that is capability, just alerting you there of that. Here is a case where I have insufficient information from my payer, so I want to make sure that has been updated, and so I'm going to hit a phone number that is required. So I will enter in this phone number, and I will update, and then it will allow me to make the process of the filing. One more thing that we're excited to announce is this client ID field. If you have a way of keeping track of your clients, we've gotten feedback that some accountants have multiple clients, or have clients with multiple EINs, and they want to be able to consolidate them with a client ID. You could add your client ID here across multiple payers and clients, and that would be, you'll be able to get reports based just on that client ID field, and so you won't have to go in and find all of the different payers that you're doing for maybe one holding company. So that is a capability there. I will not go on with the submission here because it is exactly the same as it is with any other. If you're doing Excel, Bill.com, Xero, they're going to be drastically the same. I will just show you Bill.com because some people have asked. It's going to just ask me to enter in my username here, and then I will do that. And then from here, it is exactly the same as QuickBooks Online, and that goes through. It goes as well for Xero. It will ask you to use your Xero login information. Note for all of these, if you're signed into those in the browser that you're using Tax1099 for, it will automatically use that username or go to that account. So if you say, well, it took me to a place that I was not ready to go or unsure, it will take you, if you're signed into Xero, because it recognizes that you're signed in and will automatically go to that account. So if anything out of the ordinary or seems supernatural happening, it's just that you're signed in possibly on another tab or window. I will turn it, actually one more thing I want to show you just how to create a form if there is a maybe a possible corrected form that needs to be done. So you get back and someone alerts you that actually there is improper information and it did go to the IRS. The best way to do that is going here just by forms, new form, and then selecting the form you want. And what's great about Tax1099 is we hold the payer and recipient information. It rolls from year to year, and you always have that. So even if it's 2017 or 16 or even further back, you can just select the payer and be able to select the recipient, and there is no need for entering in that data because it can save you some time there. So, and then I will just select the corrected box up here at the top, and it will giving me some instructions there. I will enter in the amounts that I need or possibly change the recipient name or payer name, whatever is required of me, and then I will continue on. So if I needed to just go forward, I will enter in the amount there and then save and continue, and then that will take me to my View, Edit, Submit page where I will select the e-filing and emailing options and scheduling. If you are past the last day for an extension for that particular form, it will no longer allow you to schedule that date because it has been you're past the submission deadline, and we do not allow you to extend it past the submission deadline, and so it will go out to the you'll be filed with the IRS on the same day if you're past the submission deadline. So that is creating a one-off form or a correction form. If you want to go do more than one, you can go back to new forms here. So if you want to do in bulk, but you have them outside of QuickBooks or Bill.com, QuickBooks Online, you can go there two places. You can import from Excel spreadsheet, or you can go back here to new forms, and they'll get you to the go to new forms, select the form that you want to do, and then instead of doing one individual form, you'll do a bulk import, and then you will select a data file. I have that data file right here. I can show you what it looks like completed, and we provide this template. So if you need this template, just select the CVS or the Excel option here, and it will generate this template. And how this works is we create a column for each box on the 1099 or document, and you will fill in that information. You do not have to repeat this. This is actually generated out of our system, so it has a way of creating multiple lines here. So for each row is a new vendor, and you can see each vendor, our business last name here is associated with a new row. Each column is a box on the 1099 or other information return. You can actually have multiple payers in here. So you can have a list of 20 payers and upload them all at once and have each corresponding recipient or vendor associated with that on the same row. So it brings them in all at once. If I did do the import process, I will select here. I'll select my file that I want to import. I've done this before. It recognizes that. I will start a new import, and then I have it selected here. It's 100% uploaded, so I can go back to my mapping screen here. It will ask me to select the year, and then here, if I use my own template or maybe want to change something around, you can select each column here, make any changes as you need to make sure the information is pulling over correctly. I'll go to next, and then it will take me right to that import screen. And here I have someone that is insufficient information. And what is great here is it's missing a state. So if I select a state where it's not seemingly correct, so say I select Texas here, it's going to give me an invalid zip code. So I want to change that to Pennsylvania, and then it makes an update. I could do an address validation check here, and it will say, hey, the entered, it does not match the USPS database. Do you want to proceed? As this is a fake person for demonstration purposes, I will hit OK, but you would be alerted there that that most likely would bounce back if I sent to that PO box. So here is the completed import grid, and then it's the same as all the other steps we've gone through. So that is the last thing that I have with everything that I'm going to cover with the integrations from QuickBooks, our accounting platforms, and scheduling forms, correcting forms, doing one-off forms, and importing information from the from Excel. So I will turn it back over to Ed, and he'll talk about managing forms once you have them imported, and he can show you some of the functionality where you can retrieve your forms once they are submitted to the IRS.
Thanks, Marcus. I'm going to bring my screen up and just mention one more thing. I just want to go back into one more thing on top of what Marcus was talking about for the imports. Now is the time for you guys to go out and do some practice. Make sure that you can connect QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, Xero, Bill.com, Zoho, anyone that you're working with. You'll want to make sure that you can get that connection going. And I say now's the time because we're going into December. December is typically a fairly slow month for us. We're doing a lot of internal training, but it's definitely slower than January. So if you run into any issues whatsoever as you're going through that practice import process, then you can contact us. We can get on the phone pretty quickly with you. We can schedule a time even with you to go through any of those imports that you might need assistance with. And so it would be beneficial to both us and you if you wanted to do that kind of practicing and contact us if you had any questions or concerns about the experiences you were going through that. Marcus already discussed scheduling the forms here, so I'm going to move on into managing the forms. So once you've created a form, once you've gone through the process that Marcus described, you've submitted the forms, they're going to go live in the Manage Forms section of Tax 1099, and I'll bring that up in just a moment to show you all the different things that you can do there, because there are a lot of different tools that are available to you in that section. So let me bring up my my site here again, and I'm just going to go here. I'm going to navigate from my Forms menu. I'm going to go into my Manage Forms page. So this is where you'll go once you've done your submission and you have submitted forms out here. And again, lots of things that you can do here. As accountants, you will have many different payers out here. I have maybe I don't know, 20 or 30 different payers from various tests that I've done going through the years. You may have 10, you may have 20. We have accounting clients who have up to 1,000 clients who are in here. So you can just go through, find the payer, the client that you're looking for, and pull up the tax year that you are working on. So generally, that'll be 2017, but I do want to note that here is where if you had a client who maybe was going under an audit and needed to provide copies of their forms, or you had a client whose recipient lost their form from a prior year and you needed to produce that for them, you can do that here. And I'll show you how to do those tasks here in just a moment. But I'm going to focus on 2017 because that's the tax year that we're going into. So you can see right here, I've got 3 different forms for this payer class act. 2 of them are for Joe Smith. One of them is for Julie Carpenter. And again, I have 2 for Joe Smith because I'm just playing around in here. 2 of them have been submitted to the IRS, so I can see that status is there already. That means I can't do any changes to them. Marcus just described the edit process. If I try to edit a form that's already been submitted, it's past that scheduled date, then I'll get this pop-up message stating that I'm not able to work with that form any longer because they have to be a future dated form. So I do have one here that is a future dated form, and I'm just going to bring up that edit screen real quick. Marcus showed you this already, so I'm not going to spend time on it. But this is where you go once you've created the form, once you've submitted the form, you find out that this person's amount, $7,000, your client didn't tell you, but $1,000 of that is an expense reimbursement. Only $6,000 was actually services, and so you just need to come in here and make that modification. When I click Save and Continue, I'm going to be able to produce that form with that new $6,000 amount on it, and I can print that out myself. I can send it via email to the recipient. I can just take a look at it. I can send it through U.S. Postal Service. So all of these action items I have over here in the right-hand column are available to me now for use with that particular form. So I'm going to choose the View Print option just for the recipient copy. And it's going to bring up the copy of the form right here. And so I've got my client information here, class act, the address, and do note that you do have to have a payer phone number there. Sometimes you don't have that originally in QuickBooks or Xero or wherever, and so the system will require you to enter that. The IRS does require that payer phone number. But this is what that form will look like. There's Joe's amount that I updated to $6,000, and then scrolling down, I get all of my my instructions. These are printable. Number 10 double window envelopes, just trifold and stick it in the envelope there. Going back to the site, among the other options that I have, I can go through. I can email this copy to the recipient. That email produces a password protected PDF. It comes from us, support@tax1099.com. Maybe something that you want to let your client know about if they are able to send out those forms via email. If they're wanting you to send out those forms via email, good to know that. The password instructions are included in the email. They're pretty thorough, but we always every year get questions from recipients. How do I open my form? Oftentimes it's someone like Joe who only has 3 letters in their name, or it's someone like Joe who should be a Joseph instead of a Joe Smith, or has given the W-9 as Joe's carpet cleaning instead of Joe Smith, and so there's some error there that is confusing that recipient. But that email will go directly from us to them. We have the edit option that I showed you, the U.S. Postal Service option, and then this unmask 10, we by default will mask out the all except for the last 4 digits, just for identification security purposes for our clients' vendors. The IRS doesn't require that, but they do recommend that you truncate the recipient's identification number. That'll be on all the 1099 forms. The W-2s, they don't have that capability yet. The IRS is in, I think, a comments period right now, soliciting information about truncating the recipient identification number, the employee identification number in that case, for the W-2. So the W-2 will be a fully exposed identification number. However, in both this PDF copy, you'll notice I mentioned that you trifold it and you put it into a number 10 envelope. That's below the fold, so even if it's out there on a W-2, it is somewhat protected. And then the forms that we mail are internally printed forms. with a pressure seal format. So they have the tabs on the side. You're probably familiar with receiving those from clients or people that you've worked with in the past in that type of format. And just again, that's a number 10 envelope for that double window. Number 10 envelope is what you use for these printable forms. And so that unmasked 10 does that. That's not to be confused with this view 10 option up here. You might notice that all of my taxpayer identification numbers for my recipients were truncated here visibly as well. If I just click that, then I can see what those taxpayer identification numbers are there. Aside from these things that I can do on an individual form basis, all these actions that I can take on an individual form basis, I can download all of my PDFs. That would give me all of my types of forms. So if I had 1099 miscellaneous and W-2, I click download all PDF. It's going to ask me what form type do I want to do. Now I just have miscellaneous, so that's pretty easy to do there. So I just take that and I can do the recipient copy here. I can do the payer copy. I can do whichever copy I want, and that's going to download that into a zip file for me. When I open the zip file, I'll have one PDF that is available to me with all of my 3 different payees on there, my 3 different recipients in this particular form. And we do that so that it's an easy print for you. So if you're doing a print job, you don't want to print them out one at a time. You want to print them all in one file. So it just makes it easier for you. The download multiple PDF option does a similar function, except it will produce one PDF copy inside the zip file for each one of these. So if I do, oops, forgot to select that, because you can do that for only some of those recipients. And so if I do that option, I'm going to get another zip file that's going to come up, and I'm going to see one form for each one of my recipients. And we just give a number on the end of those to distinguish them. You can extract them. You can send these to your clients as individual files, or you can send that download all PDF copy to your clients as well. We have an export to Excel, which is a pretty good functionality, even for some of your clients who maybe are you're using Tax1099 in a second year. With those clients, this produces out into the import format that Marcus was talking about just a few minutes ago. So this produces exactly out into that format. I've got all of my payer information. I've got all of my recipient information that's already in here from the prior year. And so I could go in, I could just delete out my amounts. I could add in my new amounts if this is somebody who's not on a QuickBooks Zero or whatever that you might be importing directly from. So it gives you a quick turnaround for pulling out that information into an Excel file and then taking it back into Tax1099 and using that Excel spreadsheet import. I've got the U.S. Postal Service mail option. So again, these blue buttons are bulk, blue for bulk. You've got the ability to send multiple forms out, multiple emails. You can unmask or remask TINs on a full basis there. And then the last 2 things are blocking the submission. I want to be clear that that blocks the entire submission. So if all of these 3 forms, you can see they're in 3 separate reference numbers. But should I have had the situation where all 3 of these forms were entered at one time, I would be blocking all 3 forms, not just one of those forms. What we do for the situation where if you get notified, you've already submitted the forms, you get notified in late January that one of those was a C corporation, you'd file a corrected form to void out that specific form for that recipient rather than blocking the submission for all of the recipients in that case. And then finally, the change scheduled date. So Marcus showed you the scheduled date option for your checkout process. This scheduled date option will let me go into any of my currently future dated files, which I only have one. It's that top form for Joe Smith, and it lets me do the same functionality. So let's say I filed an extension for these forms. This is a box 7, I happen to know, so that gives me 30 days, which would be up to March the 2nd. I can submit that change, and it is going to allow that one form. It's going to tell me, it's going to give me a reminder that I have to do an 8809 on there, but it's going to give me that change date, and I've got that right there. Later, I could come back in and I could change that scheduled date as well back to an earlier date if that were something that I needed to do. And just thinking about the 8809, so you may or may not be familiar with that, but it is an extension. For 1099s, you get an automatic 30-day extension. You can file those through Tax1099. There's also paper forms that you can download if you wanted to do that. The advantage of doing it through Tax1099 first is that we already have your payer information if you've used us in the past. Second is that you do get the response from the IRS stating that it has been approved or accepted or rejected in the case that it was rejected. So if you're just mailing that form out there, you don't really know if your IRS is actually getting that, but you just kind of trusted it will go. But we do process those 8809s here inside of Tax1099 for you as well. So these are the federal forms. There's two other sections here that are far less frequently used. Actually, before I do that, let me talk about one more thing. I mentioned the 940, 941 series forms. Those live here as well. So you can kind of see how you have a couple of expansion areas. You've got your W-2s, your 1099s, and so forth. And then below that, you've got your 940 or 941s. So if you had some of those, and I don't actually have any that have been filed because I just don't. But if you had any of those that were filed and you wanted to produce out a PDF, you'd get a similar action column, much skinnier action column because there's no recipient here, so you're not emailing them to a recipient. You can just basically have a PDF copy of that you can provide to your client or store for your files as the situation may be. There are two other sections here, managing state forms. This is states that, as Marcus indicated before, require some sort of specific direct filing. So you might have noticed that for Joe, I think I had Joe over here. Joe here is a California resident. California participates in the combined federal state filing. So even though I've got his state information here, I don't have any form record for the filing for Joe going to the state. That's as it should be because the IRS is sending the information for any of the combined federal state filing states to that state. So there's 30 odd states that participate in those in that combined federal state filing, and we automatically send it to those states. So you'll see nothing here. But for your Oregons, your Pennsylvanias, Virginia, Massachusetts, your various states that require something extra, if you had a withholding amount, even for a combined federal state filing state, sometimes if you have a withholding amount, they require a direct filing. We can do all of those filings for you. We do charge additional fees for that, but we can do all those filings for you. Those would go to live here. And again, just like before, you have all of your clients available for whatever you might need. And then the third and final part here is the reconciliation. A subset of the states require some sort of reconciliation. You may be doing that on the payroll side as you're submitting out your payroll forms, and so you have an option to opt out of the reconciliation form. If you have a client though who only has 1099 vendors and that state is expecting a reconciliation form, again, you can process that. We identify those states as you go through the checkout process, and we allow you to enter any information that's required for the reconciliation there. All right, so I think I've exhausted the totality of the managed forms page here. So I'm going to give it back over to Geneva. I think we're at the point for some additional Q&A out there.
Thanks so much to Ed and to Marcus for giving us those overviews, delving into some of the process of e-filing with Tax1099. And thank you to everyone that submitted a question in our chat box. We got some really good ones, and we have a couple minutes here. First, can you please address the request for W-9 form feature that we have in Tax1099?
Yep, I can do that. I completely forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me about that. So Geneva, I'm going to take control back for a minute here. And I'm going to go into my people menu here under Manage Recipient. So I've got all of my clients will have their recipients listed here. I've already done some kind of testing that you can see here. I've got a W-9 request that was sent. I actually have one that's been returned here, so I'll pull that up to show you what it looks like once it's completed. But as far as what the process looks like, if I come in, oh, sorry, that was actually a W-9 request for a print PDF, not for an actual one that was returned. But basically, what I do here is for any of these recipients that I want to capture a W-9 from, I can send that out this way if I already have the recipient information. If I don't have the recipient information, I can go in, I can do as little as a W-9 request. I can say that the 10 was not provided. I can say Joe's carpet or what have you. I can make that request. Oops, sorry, I have to do an email. I forget about that. So I can do that request and send out the W-9. So I've got that recipient information in, added successfully, and I can see that the W-9 request was sent. I've got the wrong date in there because we're still working through some of this. Actually, that's Joe's carpets right here. Here we go, 11/28/17. I needed to skip down one to see what that looked like. And then I'll quickly bring up my my email and show you what that looks like from the vendor side for that particular recipient. He's going to receive an email. It's going to, once my email loads, it's going to look like this: Tax1099 support, Form W-9 request. We are adding in the payer name up here at the top, so they'll recognize that it's coming from your client's name. It will still be from ours. I can see what I've called them currently, Joe's Carpet, and I can see in here what the company name is. The payer's name is available there, and then they click on the link. They go in. If a payer identification number has already been entered, they'll actually get a code there, or they'll get a password entry where they just enter the last 4 digits of their taxpayer identification number. However, if not, in this case, I didn't enter any taxpayer identification number. So if I'm the vendor, I can just kind of go in and start working around this, because I know that Joe's Carpet is not really what I want to put that under. I don't even know if I'm spelling Joseph correctly, but that's all right. And then put in the information. I can choose my my proprietor type, my entity type, I should say, and I've got all the different options that are there. If I need to change my address or put in my address, I've got that here as well. And then once I've completed the process, if I have an account number, I can do that. I've got my various identification numbers. So even as an individual sole proprietor or single member LLC, they may have gone through and done an employer identification number. We have the W-9 instructions here if they want to click out there and look at it. But I think on page 4 of the, or actually they just updated the W-9 form, revise it in November. So I think it's on page 6 now, but there is a description of what to choose there, whether you should do social security number or employer identification number. The IRS prefers social security number for those individual and sole prop, but they take an employer identification number. But whatever they enter here, they'll be able to, oops, I missed a digit. They'll be able to enter that information there. If they're using a tablet, they can sign with their finger. If they're not, they can sign with their mouse, which obviously won't be a great signature, but they can do it. And then they can choose to submit the form. When they submit the form, a couple of different things happen. One is they get a copy of the form themselves, so they're able to see what they submitted to you. Another thing that happens is that you, as the account owner or the person who's been working with that, gets an email that says that a W-9 was submitted. And then back in the site, if I refresh this this page, I'm going to see that I've got an update for Joe's Carpets. It's not going to say Joe's Carpet at that point. It's going to say Joseph Stevens. I can't remember what name I put in there. It's going to say Joseph Stevens, and then I've got his W-9 that's completed here. And again, you can pull this up. You can provide it out to your client if you want to. It's got everything in there, including the signature, including the date on which it was signed. We even offer you a report so you can go through and you can see those W-9s there. All right, Geneva, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and thanks for reminding me about that one, because I had seen that question, just forgot about it when I was in the site.
Sure, yeah, thanks for going over that. And before we wrap up here, I have a quick question for Marcus. This one is, can you re-import data if you haven't filed or sent the form to the vendor yet. In other words, how do you update your data without duplicating it when you're importing?
Hey, Geneva. Sorry, I was on mute. This is Ed. I'll answer that question. So there's a couple of different things that you might do there. Marcus showed you the import process. He got to the page that had the green and red dots on it. If that's the page that you get to, then we haven't finalized those forms. So if you stop there, you can go back to QuickBooks, you can go back to Xero, you can restart that import process after you've made any changes in QuickBooks or Xero, and you can come back through that process, and it won't duplicate anything. You'll just have whatever you currently have in QuickBooks or Xero or Zoho to bring over at that point. Second, if you have gone through that import grid page, if you've created the forms, you've got the message 10 out of 10 forms successfully created, and you're on the page where you can choose the postal mailing, you can choose the emailing and those sorts of things, you're going to want to delete the forms from there. And so you would see on your dashboard that you had unsubmitted forms for client XYZ. You would go into the View, Edit, Submit Forms page, pull up that client, pull up the 2017, 2016 forms, whatever you're using, delete those forms out. Because if you don't, and you come back through the import process, then you will have 2 forms for at least some of those vendors who you'd already imported a total form for. So, you know, we work in lots of gray areas, right? And that's a gray area. It just kind of depends on where you are in the process prior to submission. If you are only on the import grid, or if you've already gone to where you can submit the forms, you'll have a slightly different process that you need to manage. Somebody else had also asked about adding forms. So let's say you've done your close in QuickBooks for a client, you've imported those 12 forms into Tax1099, and then you've submitted them already through Tax1099, and then your client comes to you and says, oh, by the way, I forgot, which never happens, right? But they say, oh, I forgot, I just wrote a check to Joe, and I completely forgot to tell you about it, and you know, here's the information for Joe, and sorry. So you can come in and you can create a manual form using that manual form process that Marcus showed you. The IRS really doesn't mind getting multiple submissions for a single client when it's being e-filed. They certainly prefer, if you're paper filing, that you do everything at once and only send one 1096. But e-filing is so much easier for them to handle that they don't care. If you have a client who has 10 forms or 10 vendors, each having a form, you can submit one at a time, 10 different submissions. They don't care, because it's easier for them to review. So if you ever need to add a form in, you can certainly go back and do that even after you've done any importing.
Okay, thank you, Ed, and thanks again to Marcus for speaking in this panel today. We're almost out of time here, so just want to thank you again for joining and attending this seminar. The recording will be up probably early next week. We also have some other seminars coming up in the coming weeks. So we have some for specifically QuickBooks users and some for accountant users. So if you or your office would like to join in on any of those, feel free to do so. Those will be at the same URL, which you see at the bottom of the screen here. It's tax1099.com/training. Thanks again for joining us today. Have a good day and a good filing season.